Hello, everybody. My name's Helen, and my voyage began, as Amir says, in Manchester in England, in the UK, and I bring greetings from Manchester. This is a picture of Deansgate in Manchester, very near where I live, painted by Nuala Fowler, who's a young art student. Just going to move that slightly away like that. Is that okay? Yeah, good. Thank you. Manchester is a vibrant city in the north of England where we get more than our fair share of rain. It's all true. Today I'm going to talk with you about cultivating courage and compassion in leadership, why it matters, where it comes from, and what it looks like in practice. But first, I have two questions for us. What happens when leaders don't have courage and compassion? I can't hear you. You'll have to talk a bit more loudly. We don't like them. Okay, we don't like it. We don't like it. Okay, does anybody want to tell me why we don't like it? They're mean. They're mean. All right, okay. They're mean. Okay. So, hands up if you want to be in their team. No takers. Okay. So, recently, I was talking with some children in Manchester about rebuilding schools in Nepal and a school that we support in the remote Himalayan mid-hills. I first visited this school 2 weeks before the 2015 earthquakes. The children in Manchester were full of questions. What do you eat when you're there? How far do the children have to walk to school? Where do you sleep? Where do you go to the toilet? Now, that's a good question because there were no toilets at this school when we first went. Then one of them asked a really good question. Are you who you want to be? I checked because I wondered if she meant, are you doing what you want to do? But actually she'd asked, are you who you want to be? This is a powerful question. It's about values, beliefs, and identity. Often with leadership, we talk about the role, the practice, the outcomes. But leadership is primarily about who we are, our values, our way of being, not our exaltations. It's not a received story, it's not someone else's ambition for us, and it's not a regurgitated moral purpose. Our sense of purpose comes from deep insight about what it is that fulfills us. Clarity of purpose sustains us through adversity, and being in touch with this great passion builds commitment, courage, and opportunities. 4 years ago, I first travelled to Nepal. I'd wanted to go to the Himalayas for a really long time, and this was my opportunity. My vocation to work with children and young people had always been really clear. I'd worked in children's homes, schools, colleges, the University of Manchester, and most recently I was head of school improvement delivery for the Department of Education in the civil service in England. I had a great team, a great boss, the work was good, but somehow the path that I'd always been so confident about seemed to have faded. I had a national team, and we had regular keeping in touch meetings, which I learned to focus around 3 questions. How are you? I was interested in how my team were. I cared about them. I wanted to know what their hopes and concerns were, how the world was showing up for them. What's going really well? This was about recognizing the progress we were making, building on that success and learning from it. And what's high risk and unresolved? So this was about being clear how we needed to prioritize, what we needed to have at the top of our action to make sure we stayed on course. As a leader, it was my job to make sure that my team continued to be motivated, committed, and encouraged. But this was becoming harder and harder for me because my own sense of purpose was becoming more difficult to genuinely own, to the extent that I had this feeling of falling and tumbling. On the plane to Kathmandu, I began to worry that I was perhaps looking for something, but I didn't know what. And I was unsure that even if I saw it, I'd recognize it when I got there. We eventually arrived in Kathmandu after a 48-hour character-building journey due to thunderstorms. I can sleep on an airport floor anywhere. My bag stayed in Delhi, and I set off on a trek with my day sack and a few clothes that a lady in a village eventually made for me whilst en route. Whilst on our trek, we stopped to talk with Kamal Bikram, head teacher. Kamal made us welcome in his home with spicy black tea and mats to sit on, and we listened as he told us his story. Kamal told us how he'd been raised in the village, but had gone to Kathmandu for his education and his teacher training, and had returned to the village in 1997 because he felt he could do more there at the school. During the communist uprising, Kamal had been threatened several times at gunpoint, once woken from his sleep. 17,000 people lost their lives during that uprising, many of them teachers. He'd been so brave to insist that he was carrying on with his work at the school. We asked about the resources at the school for teaching, and we heard there was very little in the way of books, no stationery, no computers, just a few rough buildings, really. After some time, we parted company and set off on our journey, thoughtful and curious. Returning from our summit, we said to our guides, "We'd really like to talk with Kamal Bikram again." "He knows," they said. Sure enough, as we came down the path, Kamal came running up the other way to greet us. "I have coffee," he said. We cheered. We hadn't had coffee for a week. So we sat and talked with Kamal again, and we listened some more. We asked about the governance at the school. We asked about finance, staffing, priorities. When we parted for the second time, we made our promise. We will help. We honestly didn't have any idea how. When we got back to England, we began thinking, how are we going to do this? I was aware that my 30 years of public sector work wasn't any help to me. My understanding of UK education and policy wasn't any help to me. My LinkedIn profile wasn't going to be any help to me on this occasion. But sometimes a massive and joyous shout of yes bursts forth from somewhere near your solar plexus, and to not respond would be a great denial. And so I began doing research, making phone calls, sending emails. I thought that if we could raise the money, if we could raise the funds, someone else would deliver the project on the ground. After all, there are so many charities in Nepal. So I was phoning, I was sending emails. If I got through to anyone at all, they wanted us to fundraise for their project. No one was really interested in supporting this project. After about a year, it dawned on me that this effort was making very little impact, and that I needed to actually listen to my own thinking slightly differently. I realized that I would need to go back to Nepal, meet with Kamal, and that we would have to make a plan together. Around this time, actually, new possibilities did emerge, and we found a very small charity, quite local to us in Lancashire, called Love Nepal, who we've been able to partner with ever since. It can feel like stepping onto a rope bridge, the water rushing beneath you and uncertainty ahead, but being clear about your purpose brings the courage to lead. Reflecting on the last few years, I can now recognise 5 ways of working in my professional role and in my work in Nepal, which underpins pretty much all of my work. If you like, a coaching approach, with courage and compassion at the core, and new possibilities a recurring theme. I listen. I really listen to people's stories. How is the world showing up for them? How are they experiencing hope, uncertainty, desire, disruption? Then I begin to ask questions, sometimes just quietly for myself. Is this about the past or the future? Is it about insight or action? Is it about issues or opportunities? During the conversation, I'm still listening, and I let the silence do the heavy lifting. Empathy is the bridge here, and to quote Carl Rogers, needs to be experienced by the client. And it's in this context that we can trust people to find their own way forward. Sometimes I introduce some relevant research, theory, or a new framework. This helps organise thinking, prompt new ideas, and really importantly, helps us make plans based on evidence of what's gone before, the learning that's gone before. From here, I very often ask questions around moving to a focus. So I might be asking, out of everything we've talked about, what would you most like to focus on? What would make the biggest difference? And from here, new possibilities begin to emerge. New possibilities creates an opportunity for us to plan for a purposeful and longed-for future. Kamal now negotiates with the District Education Office for the needs of the school and community. The last time we were there, he told me within 7 minutes of the 2015 earthquake, we had a text from you. We've heard there's been an earthquake. How are you? How are the children? How's your family? How's the school? Unknown to me, the network came down completely very shortly after that. So it was weeks of waiting, uncertainty, just not knowing. I was actually in a shop in Manchester when a text came through on my phone from Kamal. Everyone is fine in the village, but the children are very frightened. The landslides have blocked the road, and the school is badly damaged. It had clearly meant so much to him to hear from us at that time. Many years ago, Dr. Sebastian Kramer wrote about the significance for young children of knowing that an adult who cares about them has them in mind. I've come to understand the significance of this, not just for young children, but in our work relationships also. Letting people we know and care about and work with know that we have them in mind when they face intense challenge enables them to rise. There's still no internet connection at the village, but every time I text Kamal, I finish by saying, "We think of you all every day, your friends in England, Helen and Rafiq." I don't think they'll ever know just how much joy we have in our work with them. Their warm hospitality, the way they roar with laughter at jokes, the acute proximity in which we live when we're with them. Privacy isn't really a thing in Nepal. Last time we were there, the children were huddling together and joking, and Kamal said to me with a bit of a sparkle in his eye, "Helen, the children say you sit quietly like a pumpkin." I'm at my most fulfilled in a small village, making a big difference to a community that I've come to love so much. So this is a story about voyages, relationships, courage and compassion, and a longed-for journey to the Himalayas. It's about the kindness of strangers, lost luggage, and the reigniting of wholehearted good work. Our courage comes from a deeply considered and clearly articulated sense of purpose. In the struggle is where our purpose grows and matures. Compassion begins with compassion for our own struggles and hopes and desires, and grows as we listen and attend to the needs and hopes and concerns of those we work with. Every time we leave Nepal, we quote from a poem we love by David White. "And if our faith is good, we'll meet again and drink from the deep well of things as they are." I'll finish by saying namaste. I greet the divine in you. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste, everybody. Namaste. Thank you.